how to understand the difference and how to handle a man's ego. I received a lot of comments on this video recently that I shot just yesterday as far as the posting of this video. And some of the comments were great. A lot of the comments were great. And some then intrigued me to let me know that there were certain aspects of this video that may not have been understood completely. And so in this video, in understanding a man's ego, I wanted to express the thoughts to possibly clear up some of the things that people didn't quite understand in this particular video. So watch that video and then watch this one. So in order to understand the previous video thoroughly, an understanding of the male ego must be put in place here. And this is not just the male ego. Actually, it is also for the woman's ego as well as for a woman's discernment. So at the end of this video, my hope is that men will understand themselves better and women will have a better discernment when they are looking at men and how they function and how they respond to different things. So one of the primary things in that video that I was trying to get across is the fact that a good man is a man who desires to give to his woman, one who desires for his woman to grow, for her to take what he gives her and make it amazing. If he gives her lemon, then she makes lemonade for the entire family, for the entire household, not greedily just hoard it for herself, but whatever it is within her, he is able to bring that out so that she can grow and flourish. I think this young lady, Cheryl, misunderstood certain aspects of it because she was saying that so his ego is the motivating factor. This is actually true, that his ego is the motivating factor, but when you say he dismisses and invalidates her achievements, he wants to be the stuff or the shit. That is not the male ego. And this is what most of us do not understand, is what is the ego. Popular culture has turned the word ego to mean something negative. In the same way that the word awful, in the 1800s, it meant something full of awe. It did not mean anything negative. But the ego has went through this transmutation where we do not truly understand it, and it's not one of those things that we should change the meaning of it, but need to maintain its original meaning. So this idea was coined in the late 1800s, early 1900s by Sigmund Freud, and it is the idea of the id, the ego, and the superego. And this will be beneficial if a man can understand how these functions, and for women to understand how to discern a man through this understanding. So I'm going to give you a third grade level understanding of the difference between the two, because it does get much, much deeper. So the simplistic way of understanding this is that the id is the part of the personal psyche that causes a person to act based on their instincts. Your id is your instinctive nature, the things that you do for self-gratification, the part of you that does not care how it affects anyone else, how it affects anything else, but it's simply for your own self-gratification. This is what a person who is narcissistic leans on and does not have any balance. Now, the ego is the part of the psyche that is trying to balance and protect the person in the actions of the persons in order to maintain their safety and to bring harmony in their life. The superego is the part of the person that they learn from their authoritative figures, generally their parental agencies, their church agencies, their government agencies, all the things of authority within their culture, their cultural norms, and which tells you this is how you're supposed to be. Now, the ego is always in constant struggle, trying to normalize your existence based on your instinctive nature that can be damaging, and the superego, which is conformity to try to have perfection within society. So the ego is not a bad thing. The actually the part of a person that is looking to bring harmony and bring peace and to bring greatness and allow you to flourish. But we've gotten into this misunderstanding of what the ego is. And so we utilize that term. But so, Cheryl, what I'm saying is that it is the man's ego based on that video is a good thing, because when you have a real man, a fully mature man, he is in balance within his self, because all of this is the consciousness and self-identification. He is in balance of himself to realize that you cannot allow for the instinctive nature of something to run amok and yet still not allow for the pressures of society to push you in a negative direction. To give you an example, the male ego, the man's ego. A man's id will tell him, I see a woman, she looks sexually inviting, I want to have sex with her. My desires are to have sex with her. The super ego says that, no, I am a man. I can have sex with whomever I choose because we're in a patriarchal society. I run things. I am the determining factor of all things. And that's what our society has said. Now, it depends on what portion, where you grow up. Those can be different things, whether you're the super aggressive nature of the northern people in America, say New York and areas like that, or the southern gentleman, or the liberal Californian, because this country is so vast that you can have those different super egos all in play. And if they're from a foreign country, then whatever the super ego or the culture of that foreign country is dictates it. So if you come from, say, a place like Saudi Arabia, where the male dominance is at a very high level, then you're going to have that pushing on the ego and when the ego is not working, when the ego is not balancing out the super ego and the id, then the super ego will allow for the id, the instinctive nature, to do whatever it wants. Whereas the ego is trying to pull back the instinctive nature. Sigmund Freud used the example of a person riding a horse, where the id of the horse, which is a strong energy animal, may want to freak out because it sees a snake. It is the controlling factors of the ego that causes the horse to not freak out in disruption, but just move away from the danger. So the ego is not a bad thing. The ego is actually a good thing, but it is when people allow their ego to be diminished and go into a state of repression, that's what allows for the id or the super ego to take over, where they're trying to conform to society or they're just living on their base nature. So you're right in a sense, just the wrong terminology, but that's not what was being expressed in the video. What was being expressed is a man who has balance, and the ego is actually stronger than the id and stronger than the super ego. And this young lady's thoughts express it very clearly in that more specific situation that she is giving. I understand that my videos are more in general, so therefore it cannot be attached to every specific situation. I would have to work with you as a coach to deal with each specific situation and bring you into the best life you can possibly have individually. But this young lady, in her description of the man, whenever she just looks for clarification, he cannot accept that and sees it as combative. That is a person who is allowing the superego of culture to dictate how he responds to his spouse, to his wife. It is a method of control when he cannot handle it, and his ego is being diminished, and it goes into states of regression and repression. Whereas if he was just being based off his id, he would just be instinctual. But this is a situation of allowing the superego to circumvent the balance and the peace and the flourishment of the ego. And when you can see these things and understand these things as an individual person, you can then learn how to better control those aspects. And when you are discerning someone, you can better understand who you should deal with. So thank you. And always remember, you have to free yourself to be yourself, because your greatness is non-negotiable.